think linking to that, the interesting thing is we don't have all the answers. And this is a very exciting space to learn, and for some of us that being involved in a multimodal activity is already being a very rewarding journey, but there's a lot of things we can still learn. So and the main purpose today is part of a capacity building process where we say what you need, that's why you can talk to us, and we can also learn from each other in the process. Yes, we do try and blueprint it with a specific instructional template to make sure that we, from a quality perspective, at least go in a direction. But there's a lot of experimentation amongst the colleagues at the moment, so it's not that there's a hard and fast rule. We need to be open-minded when we engage with this technology, and we see how it can enrich the learning experience. Another mind shift over and above to the integration of technology is the notion or the understanding that we are responsible for our students. So I'm not just going into the lecture and teaching them and mark the exam and give them marks. Ultimately, I'm responsible for their learning experience and their success. So I need to take ownership of that process. And what we try and accomplish with the multimodal approach is to co-create with the student in there. Make them involved, and the more people are involved, we know the statistics on that, the better the outcome. So this is a joint experience. So it's not to say you can sit on your own time, not come into class, and at the end will graduate. You will actively participate in the process, and as we go along, we will be changing some of the things. So it's really ownership from both ends, and we will need to work around that and see where it's going. And in the process, we will try and get the lessons from that for future. But if you pick up on the conversation out there, it's a thing going on. Where are we driving to? The 25% online objective that we're trying to reach by end of 2018, meaning that existing programs we offer for the background, we're already trying to blend and move to that direction. All new units, which is we're talking here today, are already developed in that space.
But I think we should define exactly what we meant by 25%.
Yeah, we'll discuss that.
Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah. So there's a slide talking to that. So what it comes down to, it's in a typical week offering over 12 weeks, we have a 2-hour class and a 1-hour tutorial. So 25% of the content per week we need to provide in an online environment. Integrated with, and this is where the confusion comes. So how far do we push that one? In essence, what we would like to do, and this is what we will do in this unit, is to, if you use the old terminology, flip 1 to 2 to ideally 3 weeks over a period of 12 weeks, offered fully online. Those bottlenecks where we have holidays on a Wednesday or Thursday, we have those long weekends, those are the ideal weeks to flip and provide the full content. But it's not just a flipping exercise, otherwise technology becomes the plug. So I think it's important to understand technology will be an assistance. So what we try and also embrace in the process is to say everything that we do offline needs to be available online, and that's a key learning point so far. So it's not that you will get the one there and the one there. So if I have a video clip, for instance, the transcribed version of that is available online, and there's also maybe a slideshow to that, having different modalities to embrace the concept through which people can learn. Obviously, in going down this avenue, more and more people will be able to self-learn, and that's also a huge important point we need to make. To take responsibility for their own learning and almost come to class prepared differently. So traditionally we would have shared the content with them, worked with them through the definitions. Now they can watch my video clip on the definitions, and they can watch that 10 times. They can listen to the audio discussion we had on a key point 10 times. They can look at my slideshow 10 times. And when I walk into the class, I immediately are working from a different position, and we can facilitate the discussion, look at the application of and facilitate questions. And then we take the questions back, and we have forums and focus groups online, and it's a whole discussion. So it's really, you must not try and slice it and have this golden recipe and say I must do this, this and this, and this is multimodality. Roy, I'm not sure if you would like to add to that, because I know Roy is very passionate about this specific point.
It's fine. I do think that HB has spoken to a lot of different things there, so it's quite a mouthful to get your head around. And that's why one thing that I would like to encourage is continuous discussion. While you're busy developing and writing, is stay in contact with HB, but you're welcome to stay in contact with me to bounce ideas or something off. Not content-wise. I understand you're the expert in the content, but just in terms of these ideas of modality, etc. So if I can maybe just bring a little bit of clarity. If you don't, does everybody know what HB is referring to in terms of 25% hybridity? Do you know what that issue is?
Was he? Because really being from bits might be worthwhile, and there's other people that's not here today that need to understand that.
So, first of all, the number 25% is something of it's a number. It's something that within the Laureate institution, because Monash is largely owned by Laureate, within the Laureate institution they are pushing for their institutions to hit a measurable amount of 25% within the next couple of years. But it's just a number. That's a reasonable target to go for. It's nothing magical about that number per se. But what do they mean? That 25% they're speaking to, they are talking about hybridity. So if I can just clarify a couple of things. If you go into literature and you read about blended, you read about hybrid, you'll very often see them interchangeable. They're talking about a course that a certain portion of this course is delivered online as a blended course. A certain portion of this course delivered online is a hybrid course, and they sound identical, right? And in some ways they are, but in Laureate's interpretation of that, we apply blended to the module or the course or the unit level, so that what we understand is that a portion of that course is delivered online, and that's a blended course or a blended module, right? When we speak of hybrid over here, when we speak of hybrid, we are speaking of the program. So a program is hybrid, which could come in different ways. A program could have some courses purely online, some courses purely face-to-face, and some courses being blended. That would be a hybrid program. A hybrid program could also just be blended and face-to-face courses without any online courses. It doesn't matter, but that's still a hybrid program because they're not all one mode of delivery. Okay, but it's at the program level. So what Laureate, I believe, is driving at is that over the next few years, for reasons that they motivate, some of them are efficiencies which are business-driven efficiencies. Some of them are underpinned by serving a new client in the student, in terms of one that has to fit into the 21st century, has to cope with an online world and a way of engaging, etc., and a whole bunch of other things. They are saying that when a student comes into a program and then exits the program, around about 25% of that student learning experience would have taken place in an online way. Okay, and that's essentially what it boils down to. What we are asking, because we don't have fully online courses to make up part of that package at this stage anyway, what we are asking our designers to do is to look at a way in which we can blend our modules and our units so that our programs become hybrid to the extent that we can meet that sort of objective of theirs. What does that ultimately mean? That in a normal course that would have had, and I'll keep the numbers working on a 4 hours of face-to-face contact a week because it's easier maths, right? If you were going to be having 4 hours of face-to-face classroom in a week over 12 weeks, if that was going to be what was required face-to-face from you, then in order to, and from the students obviously what I mean, then in order for that module or that course to be considered blended to the extent that it speaks directly to this hybridity objective, then one of those lessons per week essentially would have to be facilitated in a different mode where there's not the face-to-face engagement. That does not mean that it's not contact. Okay? There's two different things here. There's traditional distance learning where material arrives at the student, they engage with that material and they send it back to the lecturer. That traditional distance engagement is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is contact in a different kind of a way. What we, as HB was saying just now, very typically much of our face-to-face time is spent one way broadcast of information in any case, is it not? Right? So you can be in the class sitting in the lecture and there's no discernible benefit to you whether you sit there and listen to me preach at you for an hour from the front or whether you sit in front of a video and watch me preach at you for an hour. There's no discernible difference, right? So that's not what we want. We don't want either of those scenarios. But really what we are saying is that there's times and ways when the information is largely information which is one directional, because it's new information, right? That can be sometimes delivered in a space which does not have to be face to face, but in essence is the same contact, the same degree of contact. What HB also referred to as a flipped approach, so that means that there's certain chunks of our information. Now it's much better, rather than having an hour-long video, would be to chunk that distribution of information into a short video, touching on key points, maybe some interactive quiz or whatever other types of things to keep the student engaged. That's a different discussion. But the flip thing is saying, well, rather than the students coming here, and probably you guys understand the flipped approach, you might have read about it or even used it, but rather than the students coming into my classroom and for an hour long I tell them as many things as I think are important for this content, and they get very little opportunity for clarification and all that kind of stuff. There are opportunities where we can say, well, they can actually receive that information when they're on their own. They can struggle with it to whatever extent in order to understand, but when they come back to class the next time, it's a much more engaging process, because now there's some background context for them, and you can engage them in discussions and debates to see the level to which they have understood and which you can take them forward. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Kind of thing. So that's not the only way, but that's one of the ways, is the sort of flipped classroom approach kind of thing. So those are some of the things that HB was speaking to, that maybe is just a lot of stuff. An American, we pick up Americanisms over here because they float around. So, the Americans, it is. This has not been broadcast though.
You can find me after this.
And so we have some of this verbiage, as I've heard some Americans say, this verbiage. There's a lot of words and a lot of concepts, and we're not necessarily all on the same page with all of those things. And so that's why it's important for us to get to the place where we at least thinking in the same room, on the same page, more or less. We might have different lenses, but largely we're thinking along the same lines.